Thank you so much, Sophie, really for organizing such a nice event with a lot of great insights coming to light, especially just now from John. A lot of great takeaways. I hope to share the same. My name is Rutvik, and I run a fund called GoVentures. And today I'm going to share a story about us and how we came to be. And it's one also related very much to my journey itself. So I hope you'll enjoy it. So the key takeaway I think I want to give you guys today is that, all of us here in today's room as entrepreneurs and investors, we need to keep an international outlook on opportunities and developments. And in the age of AI, even more so in emerging markets. And we have the means to do this very easily nowadays. And over the past number of activities at this conference, I even found some very interesting ways how founders here are constructing their teams with talent from all over the world as well. But it's not just talent. There are funding opportunities, there's regulation that can be in your favor, and there's policies that can really push you forward. Now, this is the story we took at GoVentures, and I'll tell you a little bit about how that happened. And our story begins in Malta. Malta is a small island in the Mediterranean, and it's the home of GoVentures. So the GDP of Malta is probably half the size of Twitter back in the day. And it's just a population of about 500,000. So it's the size of San Francisco. It's part of the EU, and they use the euro. Some of the main things that happen there are online casinos, which are regulated. In fact, that drives a lot of the economy. And you may have heard about even Binance opening up headquarters over there. So all in all, with 300 days of sunshine a year, it's pretty much island life. And it's attractive to younger talent, and now the government is really starting to incentivize tech entrepreneurs. They do this with different kinds of policies. For example, if you raise up to $1 million, the government will match that one-to-one. So there are not too many startups there, but it's beginning. So we would wonder why you would locate in a place like this, right? And the answer I get most of the time is tax benefits. But that really isn't the reason. Although there can be in some shapes and forms, that's not the fundamental reason. The reason is because we are a corporate venture capital fund from a 300 million euro market cap company. And it's through this company that we grew over the years, and we have about a number of assets across the Mediterranean, such as telecoms businesses, data centers, managed IT services, cybersecurity. And in 2019, we said, let's look at investing in tech startups for innovation. Because if you look at how innovation kind of trickles around the world, you generally get it a little bit later in Southern Europe. So we thought to invest to skip this innovation lag. So, of course, I can't tell you about a nice place without showing it to you. I think there's somebody here who was just telling me that he had been there. This is a look at Malta. I used to actually live right here down the corner behind some of these buildings. So, because there's clearly limits on talent where we come from in Malta, we had to invest globally. And because of this, we were fortunate to find outliers in our portfolio which weren't even in North America. The two best performers in our portfolio are actually from India and Singapore. Now, this example serves to drive the point that, if we look outside of our home markets, we can clearly find opportunities. And here, we thought we would be finding them in North America, but they weren't there. So, my own personal journey in this comes from, as Sophie said, I've lived around the world. I'm originally from India. I was born in Dubai. I lived in the US for some time, but then spent about 13 years in Europe. And in the Czech Republic, in Malta, and in the UK before moving to Toronto. So across these different places and through these experiences is how I kind of gained the perspective I'm going to share with you today. So my name is Rutvik. Please feel free to add me on LinkedIn if you want. My last name is Deepak. That's D-E-E-P-A-K. I did not have the time to update the slides to put it there. So I'm a co-founder at GoVentures, where through looking at international opportunities, we managed to reach an almost 5x multiple on our portfolio in just 5 years. Before this, I was doing a little bit of being a little bit of a builder myself, and this was pretty early on in the cloud days, in like 2011, when we were building in Europe, and over there in 2011. AWS did not even have their point of presence, their data center in Ireland. So it really felt like how you guys are today in the audience, you founders, building on the edge of innovation. Back then it was cloud, today it's AI. So I feel I can really relate on that end. Maybe it's giving away my age a bit. And today I work with a number of funds. GoVentures takes up a lot of my time, but I do help with a number of other accelerators and investors around the world. So basically, it's through these various opportunities that I got a chance to see what startup ecosystems operate like around various parts of the world. And it's through that we actually built this portfolio at GoVentures. You might recognize some of these. I'm not sure. Any of you guys who travel a bit, you might have used Airalo, which is an eSIM platform of ours. So let's say you're traveling to Germany tomorrow, and you want to get data when you land. You could use this app, and you won't have to use roaming on your phone or visit a physical store. And they're doing pretty well. They're well known. They have about 10 million subscribers, which is why some of you might know them. So if you look at how venture outcomes are distributed. And I find this is helpful for founders as well, because just like John was talking about what you're up against in terms of loss and failure, we also face the same on the investor side of the spectrum too. And with more than 50% of funds not returning more than 1x their capital to LPs. So that's dangerous. Fortunately, we skipped that, so we don't have to worry about that, but it is the reality. And I believe 2024 was one of the worst years in allocations to venture capital as an asset class. There is a lot of dry powder. There's a long debate about this. But some people might question how much they want to rely on venture capital money to grow and scale their business, and if there are other ways, really. So fundamentally, I told you the story about Go, where in the small place, we had nothing, but we had a little bit of cash from the corporate, and we used this as a launchpad to the rest of the world to kind of unlock our growth and innovation. Now, I'm here to say that you guys can do the same thing, right? And to do that, let's look at some examples of ecosystems around the world and what the real building blocks to starting off in an international territory are. Number one is, of course, talent, right? You need the people. You need to have educational institutes that allow for research and development. And, a lot of the time when I was looking this up, some of the best companies are created by, companies that have gone big. Like, for example, in Estonia, when Skype got taken over by Microsoft, that's when a lot of new technology came out there. Same thing with Spotify. Same thing with PayPal Mafia, right? So these are the kind of things that spark an ecosystem, as well as things like financial, right? There has to be a big enough market for you to, if you're targeting it as a market, for you to get a portion of. But as I'm speaking to a lot of founders here, there's a lot of competition in North America. So maybe that may not be the battleground for everybody, is the question I pose. So we're looking at financial, we're looking at the funding bit. You know, there's government support as well in each and every territory. Sometimes, you know, there are new policies in the Middle East where they're trying to attract businesses to launch their tech companies there. And from that, they're requiring people to locate there. Now, this is not true of all of these programs, but they're things to look out for. But then also things like infrastructure, because if we're especially looking at things like developing AI tools, we'll need the IT infrastructure to run it. So let's look at some of the developed startup ecosystems around the world. So in Silicon Valley, where we are today, you know, we have access to everything. I think you guys see it at this event. You speak to people, you're like, wow, we're creating amazing things, right? We have the talent, people are innovating, we have the cash, everyone is a founder who's exited and raised some money here. So, you know, but none of this comes without a cost, right? There's a high cost of living, there's a saturated market. And this saturated market is the exact reason I'm saying, hey, maybe it's time to look at different places, right? Let's look on the other side to China. So here, there's a lot of hardware innovation and government support, but then you have issues related to IP protection, right? Then somewhere in the middle, you have Europe, where there is a lot of talent. You have access to people from all over the continent, right? Because it's a single territory. And there is government support, but there's a smaller VC market. And as I'll talk about later, there's regulation that they put on, right? In India, huge talent pool, low cost, large market, people paying less for that same product over there. But AI talent is still nascent, okay? Now let's flip it and look at the emerging markets, because that's something that we rarely consider, right? So if you take Latin America, you know, you'll find in each of these different regions, there's generally a vertical focus, because we're looking at solving fundamental problems in these places, right? So things like fintech, agriculture, and supply chain are doing well in Latin America. There's a lot of expanding VC interest. And, you know, but that's not without economic challenges, political instability, things like currency devaluation, right? So while you can use these markets maybe as testing grounds, maybe you would think twice about going there as a main market where you're going to cash in on revenue. Looking at Africa, we have, you know, focus on fintech, health, and agriculture, and challenges especially on capital and infrastructure. Now, you know, you'll notice that fintech is a focus of most places, because payments is such a complicated beast in most territories, right? And some of the most, the places that have got it right, like for example, I was just in India, and the way they've implemented universal payments over there is incredible. You know, it's so versatile that you can transfer money to anybody using any bank, right? So, you know, the best way to understand the differences of these markets is to take the examples. So looking at Latin America, Rappi is a delivery company, so they do last mile delivery. Clara is expense management, so that is fintech. Kavak is a car leasing or sales company. In Africa, most of the unicorns are actually fintech companies, actually. So that's one thing to notice. So I tried to put one example that wasn't, which is Andela, and that is an HR tech company, actually. In Southeast Asia, we have Grab, which is, again, logistics last mile. Lazada is e-commerce, and Traveloka is travel. So that should give you like an idea of where the activity in these regions are, what's taking off well. So let's look at the same map, but now not just at startup ecosystems, but let's look at it from the perspective of AI. So there's some maturity factors. You'll see some overlap here, but they are distinct in their own shape and form. You know, you have to have, of course, AI-related educational institutions. You have to have the investment, the cash into R&D. And, you know, these all come generally if there's enterprise adoption. So are there big companies that are using AI, right? You know, you hear, I think, was it the guys at Klarna? They said not hiring anybody for this coming year because AI has improved their efficiency as is, right? So underlying all of this, you know, you got to have the infrastructure and cloud computing, of course. And on the other side, barriers to maturity, right? So if you don't have the talent, if there's too much red tape put to you by the governments, or if there's issues with data availability, right, and access, you know, imagine health tech solutions, which apply to points 2 and 3 there. Then, of course, the infrastructure gaps. So I'll pull this up. Looking at AI adoption, again, we see North America leading the pack, especially in enterprise AI adoption, right? We're talking about these big companies that are taking advantage of it to improve their workforces. But there's certain areas that are pulling apart from the pack. Unsurprisingly, autonomous vehicles, we saw the guys at Tesla right outside, you know, it generated so much buzz having a couple of Cybertrucks moving around, which were shockingly easy for anybody to take for a test run. But even in cloud computing, healthcare, things like that. Let's look at China then. Over there, the AI research is particularly taking off in facial recognition and autonomous driving there. The government is backing as well certain AI projects. Taking a look at Europe, you know, there is growing use of AI, but the adoption is a little bit slower compared to the US. There's a lot of emphasis on ethical AI. There's a lot of regulation there, you know, taking historic examples of GDPR. You know, I built a cloud platform which was actually using GDPR as the sales angle for that. So these things are making things slower, but you'll notice also that there's a focus on Industry 4.0, so manufacturing, industrial automation, AI-driven supply chain optimization. Then, you know, as you saw with the other maps, you know, in emerging markets, in developing markets, there are more fundamental problems that are being solved. You know, you're looking at fintech, you're looking at agriculture, payments, things like that, health tech. Those are the fundamental things. Interesting to note the variance there, you know, Industry 4.0 versus driverless cars and robotics, and then things like health tech and fintech. So let's give you some key takeaways. So this was supposed to be, I think AI failed me on this slide. I tried to make like an actual scorecard. Nothing like it didn't work, so we still haven't solved that problem. But the scorecard for startup ecosystem, the things you're thinking about before you choose a place. One is funding, so looking at funding everywhere from early angel seed stage to venture capital and grants, then talent availability, as well as regulatory environment, and then market size and growth potential. For the AI ecosystems, there's a couple of other factors to look at. One is R&D investment, the other is talent pool. Then there's the business integration of AI, as well as startups and innovation. So for entrepreneurs, I'd say, you know, look at target emerging markets. You know, we're in the age of AI rather than just SaaS where things are being made for to be used and reused for the same customer. Here you can do some customization with AI. Using government support and leveraging support there, as well as favorable regulations. On the investment side, it's looking at the emerging markets, definitely targeting infrastructure and diversifying the portfolio by choosing various markets. All right, I'll hand it over to the next guys. Thanks for making it a lovely event.